It's the early 19th century. In India's northeastern states, more than 400 women a year are burned alive on the funeral pyres of their dead husbands. This Hindu ritual is known as sati, and for years it's been tolerated by the country's British rulers. But no longer.
In 1829, the British decide it has to stop. When some Hindus protest to a British general, he says to them, "You say it is your custom to burn widows. Very well. We also have a custom that when a man burns a woman alive, we tie a rope around his neck and hang him. You follow your custom, and then we shall follow ours."
For many British people, the Empire was all about doing good, by force if necessary. Some believed they had a duty to bring light into the world. Others that they had a right to rule it. We really did know best. Both beliefs fundamentally changed the nature of the modern world, and they changed our sense of Britain's place in it. In the second half of the 19th century, the British Empire reached from Canada in the west to Australia in the east. The last phase of expansion was about to begin, and many of these empire builders believed their work was ordained by God. In the summer of 1861, a small party of white men found themselves travelling up the river Shiri in what is now Malawi. To Europeans at that time, Africa was simply the Dark Continent, a place of ignorance and superstition. They had come here to change that.
The men sang hymns as they travelled. Lead, Kindly Light was a particular favourite. Their leader was already a legend in Britain, a man who had come to embody the Victorian purpose in Africa.
His name was David Livingstone, a dour, fanatically determined lowland Scot. He was the first white man to have crossed the continent of Africa. He'd come here as a missionary to save African souls for Christ, but what he found appalled him. Britain had abolished slavery in the empire decades before. But Livingstone found Africans still being captured and sold to Arab and Portuguese slavers all over East Africa. Now he and his companions dreamed of sowing the seeds of a new world here. One based not on African superstition and slavery, but on two Victorian obsessions, Christianity and free trade.
This river would become God's highway into the heart of Africa. Down it would come African cotton and wheat and ivory and ostrich feathers, and up it, in exchange, would go clothes and tools and machinery made in Glasgow or Manchester.
Livingstone had a slogan for it: Christianity and commerce. This would be the empire's new civilizing mission. Bible in hand, he was going to unlock the Dark Continent. Such was the dream. The reality was different. The place chosen by Livingstone to build his mission turned out to be hostile and dangerous, a malarial death trap.
Perfect, thank you very much. Welcome. Thank you.
One by one, Livingstone's followers succumbed to hunger and disease.
And this is all that remains. It's the grave of one of the missionaries, Henry de Wint Burrup. His name's even misspelt on his tombstone, poor chap. He died of exhaustion and diarrhea in February 1862. An eyewitness said that he had shrunk to half his normal size and had turned a horrible shade of yellow. One of his last acts had been to write a letter to the rowing clubs of Oxford and Cambridge asking them to raise money to buy a steamer to go up the Shirry River to stop.
Where Livingstone blazed a trail, other missionaries followed, though in slightly more comfort. Well into the 20th century, thousands of them set out across the empire to bring Christianity to the heathen. They often brought with them education and modern medicine. When Africans came to demand freedom from their colonial masters, they dismissed much of this foreign do-gooding as destroying native culture. Yet more than 100 years after Livingstone, much of the missionary legacy is alive and well.
Very good. Class said management. Management. Again. Management. Again. Management. As I am here, I'm managing this class. Everybody is fine because I'm here. I am managing the class.
Today, the work started by Church of Scotland missionaries has, as all over Africa, become a local African activity. The Nkolokoti Primary School was founded in 1935 in what was then the British colony of Nyasaland. The school now has almost 8,000 pupils. Some walk for hours to get here. Such is the demand, they have to be taught in shifts.
Missionaries have come in for a lot of stick for providing an excuse for flag planting and land grabbing. But the fact of the matter is that without missionaries, this school wouldn't exist. And so 8,000 children would get no education, and come to that, no breakfast either.
Mine's thicker than yours. Today, the school is funded by the Malawi government, although the porridge comes courtesy of a Scottish charity.
You know, we start very early in the morning. Some leave very early without eating. When they come here, they find porridge. They fill their stomachs. Yes.
Now, what do you feel about the missionaries who started this school?
They did a great job. And they assisted this area very much. Just imagine, it was established in 1935. Up to now, we are still benefiting.
Is it a religious school?
It is a religious school.
So you teach them about Christianity?
Yeah. We have a subject, Bible knowledge. Yeah.
What do you hope they will learn in your school?
They learn to be good citizens. We teach them to love each other, respect each other, respect elders. That's what we teach them.
David Livingstone's vision of Christianity and commerce was in a sense fulfilled. Where the missionaries led, the traders followed. They came to grow coffee or tobacco or cotton. Their African workers, so went the plan, would be influenced towards Christianity. The march of the white race led by Britain across the globe in the late 19th century was astonishing to behold. So astonishing that people began to search for explanations. An idea took hold among some people that this must be a scientifically predetermined destiny. In 1863, the members of the Anthropological Society of London gathered to hear what was billed as a scientific lecture. It was a momentous and, as it turned out, hugely controversial occasion. The speaker was the president and founder of the association, Dr. James Hunt. The title of his paper was "The Negro's Place in Nature."
I propose to discuss the physical and mental characteristics of the Negro, with a view to determining not only his position in nature, but also the station he should occupy. I shall also dwell on the analogies between the Negro and the anthropoid apes.
What followed was over an hour of racist nonsense dressed up in the pseudo-technological language of scientific observation.
Skull is very hard and unusually thick, enabling Negroes to fight or carry heavy weights on their heads with pleasure.
There were hisses and boos from the audience. Some considered he was justifying slavery, which the British were proud of having abolished. But his ideas struck a chord among more fanatical empire builders.
Because the empire had been such a huge success story, they began to talk about how they had, and this phrase was pretty widely used, a genius for empire. But what was this genius?
It got muddled up with Charles Darwin's ideas about evolution. The champions of empire argued that the British had evolved naturally to rule over others, so that they were now, in fact, a superior race.
Everywhere we see the European as the conqueror and the dominant race, and no amount of education will ever alter the decrees of nature's laws.
David Livingstone had preached that colonizers had a duty to help the unfortunate. But what was the difference between unfortunate and inferior? A conviction took hold that helping meant ruling. One man who felt this new aggressive sense of mission more keenly than any other came to southern Africa in 1871.
His name was Cecil Rhodes, and you need a fistful of adjectives to describe him. He was bold, he was buccaneering, he was brilliant, but he was also brash, brutal, and bigoted. He added great tracts of Africa to the empire, on the principle that, as he put it, we are the first race in the world, and the more of the world we inhabit, the better it is for the human race.
The empire was built or stolen from others by mavericks, and Rhodes was the maverick's maverick. He did as he pleased and only told the politicians in London afterwards. He made war, he created colonies off his own bat. Rhodes called the English God's chosen instrument in carrying out the divine idea. It could almost have been David Livingstone talking.
But where Livingstone saw his duty as being to serve, Rhodes had other ideas. Africa lies ready for us, he told his supporters. It is our duty to take it.
Livingstone's treasure was in heaven. Rhodes's was on earth, or under it.